All right, today we're tackling a huge mystery, maybe the central mystery of the Jeffrey Epstein files. See, there was this new law that was supposed to blow the whole thing wide open, right? Bring everything into the light. But instead, it's created this paradox, one that could end up keeping the biggest, most explosive secrets buried forever. So let's break down exactly how a law designed for transparency somehow became the ultimate shield for secrecy. So, yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? If this new law is supposed to force the Epstein files open, how is it possible that the biggest secrets are now more protected than ever? It sounds completely backwards. But to really get our heads around this paradox, you got to follow the money. Because the money, well, that's what made the entire network tick.
Okay, so first things first, the financial engine. Because the Epstein operation, this wasn't just one guy. It was a full-blown enterprise. And like any enterprise, it needed a massive financial machine to keep it running. And when you look into that machine, you start to see a level of institutional complicity that is, well, it's just staggering.
Let's just start with a number, just to get a sense of the scale we're talking about here. $1.5 billion. According to a U.S. Senate investigation, that's how much cash Epstein moved through just one bank, JPMorgan Chase. And look, this wasn't just a simple banking relationship. This was the financial lifeblood of his entire operation.
And this wasn't some kind of accident or oversight. The records show JPMorgan Chase knew exactly who they were dealing with. For years, they were underreporting his suspicious transactions. They finally did cut ties with him in 2013, and the reason they gave was unacceptable risk of money laundering and human trafficking. But get this, the story doesn't stop there. They failed to file the legally required government reports for another 6 years after they dropped him. And even worse, top executives were actually caught advising Epstein on how to get around the reporting requirements, and they were actively hiding information from their own compliance teams. It's just wild.
Yeah, the Senate's investigation, they didn't pull any punches. They called it, and this is a direct quote, a compliance disaster of this scale. So we're not talking about a simple failure to follow the rules here. This was the willful, conscious enabling of a massive criminal enterprise by one of the most powerful banks in the world. But as shocking as all that is, the financial crime, that's really just the first layer of this onion. Now we've got to look at how this whole operation was allegedly used as a weapon.
And this is where the story takes a huge turn. We're pivoting from financial crime straight into the world of international espionage. Because according to the source material we're looking at, Epstein wasn't just a predator, he was a protected asset. Someone operating right at that murky intersection of global power and intelligence.
This brings us to a concept called the blackmail capital thesis. And the theory is pretty straightforward, really. The idea is that Epstein's trafficking network wasn't just for his own sick gratification. It was basically a factory for producing compromat, compromising material on some of the most powerful people on the planet. And that material could then be used as leverage by state intelligence services.
Okay, but here's where it gets really complicated. You've got different parts of the U.S. government telling two completely different stories about this. On one hand, you have the Department of Justice's criminal investigation. They concluded there was, and I'm quoting here, no credible evidence of blackmail. But then on the other hand, you have the Senate Finance Committee. They were looking at the financial intelligence, and they found files on people who were at risk of blackmail or other foreign corruption. So what does that tell you? It strongly suggests the evidence does exist, but it's locked away in this silo of financial intelligence, completely separate from the criminal case. And look, this isn't just some wild theory. The source material we're drawing from documents Epstein acting as a kind of intelligence fixer. I mean, he brokered a security deal between Israel and Mongolia. He helped set up a diplomatic back channel between Israel and Russia during the Syrian civil war. He even hosted an active serving Israeli intelligence officer at his home in Manhattan. Let's be real. Private citizens just don't do these things, not unless they're operating as a valued asset for a state intelligence agency.
All of which brings us right back to that central paradox we started with. We have the money trail, we have these very clear intelligence connections, this is the stuff everyone wants to see. So how on earth did the very law that was meant to expose all of it end up building the strongest firewall we've ever seen? Right, let me walk you through how this legal maneuver works. The old justification for keeping these things secret was basically to avoid political embarrassment. The new Transparency Act, it explicitly prohibits that reason. And on the surface, that sounds like a massive win, right? But here's the catch. The law at the same time created a brand new and way more powerful justification for secrecy. Anything that has to do with national defense or foreign policy. And using that reason is now expressly permitted. It's a justification that courts are incredibly reluctant to ever challenge. So they basically swapped a weak, flimsy shield for one made of solid iron.
So when you think about Epstein's documented role as this intelligence fixer dealing with foreign governments, well, the Department of Justice now has a legally bulletproof mechanism to hide the most sensitive files. They've just swapped out a flimsy political excuse for an ironclad national security one. And the craziest part? It's baked right into the new law. This isn't some loophole they found. It was designed this way. It's a feature, not a bug.
So, where does that leave us? What does this mean going forward? Well, the fight to just get the files released. That's pretty much over. But a brand new, and honestly much more complex battle has just kicked off. And that's the fight over the redactions. The fight over all that black ink.
The analysis from our source material concludes that the whole strategy has to shift now. First, congressional oversight bodies need to start aggressively challenging every single redaction that's made on the grounds of national security. Second, they've got to compel the Treasury Department to release those financial intelligence records, the ones where the blackmail risks were first identified. Third, they need to pursue actual criminal referrals for the specific bank executives who made this whole network possible. And finally, they have to demand a full classified assessment from the intelligence community about their relationship with Epstein's network. Each of these steps is designed to break down a different wall of secrecy.
And all of this leaves us with one last really critical question. The concept of national security is supposed to protect a nation from its enemies, right? But what happens when that term gets twisted and it's used to protect powerful and compromised figures inside that country? At what point does a shield that's meant for the nation become a shield for its dirtiest secrets? And that, right there, is the question at the very heart of the Epstein paradox. Thanks for sticking with me for this explainer.